For the condition we call disease, lack of ease originates in every case because of a blocking of some function of the body through habits of life, which conflict with the laws of nature. Nature is orderly, but not unkind or revengeful, and we have only ourselves to blame if we permit destructive habits to conflict with the fixed and inexorable rules of an omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent creator. If we suffer, the greatest folly is to believe it is because of our stars or fate, and not through some fault of our own. After all, our conscious habits of life are of our own choosing, and these should be made to harmonize with the never-changing order of divine law. The ability to be able to point out every factor which can operate in producing disease in a patient is both an art and a science, involving as it does nothing less than a complete study of the patient's entire life and habits. A classification of some at least of the principle of such causes may be made in a book of this nature. And these, it is felt, can hardly fail to be of inestimable value to the earnest seeker after truth, by giving him a solid foundation of fact to work upon in his researches, and furnishing him with material from which an enormous amount of good can be obtained. My experience and observation have convinced me that the most potent causes in the interference with health are the following. First and foremost in the cause of disease is the congestion of blood containing morbid material in organs or tissues of the body. In simple language, this thickened blood, surcharged with the products of imperfect metabolism, finds itself unable to pass as freely through certain parts of the body as is necessary for perfect health, and becoming gradually dammed up in organs or tissues, produces an engorgement, which interferes with the free and natural functioning of that particular part. There are few of the disorders from which mankind suffers where this condition is not present, and it is no exaggeration to say that it is the principal cause of all disease. This condition of the bloodstream is brought about by the use of more food than the body actually requires for its repair and growth, the improper kinds of food elements used in excess, and insufficient exercise of the muscles so that the nourishment assimilated may be completely used up. This is one of the main causes of growth such as tumors and cancers, and likewise of those diseases which manifest themselves by copious discharges from the mucous membranes, such as tuberculosis, bronchitis, ovarian and womb disorders, and leukorrhea. It follows, in consequence, that the cure depends upon the elimination of this congestion, and a readjustment of the habits governing eating, exercising, etc., so that the body may be freed from the encumbrance. In this connection, the fasting cure is so effective in producing quick results that the change experienced by the sufferer is hardly less marked than that felt by the prisoner when the ball and chain have been removed from his ankles. It has to be experienced to be properly understood and appreciated. Second, enervation is a condition found to be present in many diseases, and it is caused principally by a waste of nerve energy. The human body might be described as a radiating transformer of universal energy, but through wrong habits of thought and action, large volumes of this energy are diverted into channels where it is wasted, and normal functioning is impeded because of insufficient power being sent to those parts where it is most needed. The exercise of any of the destructive emotions is perhaps as powerful a cause as any of this waste of power, and if one gives way to fear, worry, jealousy, anger, etc., an enormous expenditure of energy is involved, which, if taken up in this way, is not available for use elsewhere. And this results sooner or later in impairment of some part of the system. Eye strain must be avoided by anyone who is desirous of building up strength, and it will frequently be necessary to wear suitable glasses in order to relieve unnecessary effort in using the eyes. I find that too much shopping in crowded stores has a very enervating effect, and patients must be cautioned against this habit. Physical culture exercises, on the other hand, seem to be of remarkable assistance in building up energy, and the body is apparently recharged after systematic calisthenics. Whereas most kinds of work are enervating, graduated exercises, taken with a definite object in view, will be productive of very beneficial results. Enervation can also be brought on through the irritation produced by disagreeable sounds, odors, sights, tastes, and feelings, from which it will be apparent that there is great wisdom in quiet, well-regulated ways of living. Enervation is one of the principal causes of auto-intoxication, as the eliminative processes simply must be provided with energy enough to enable them to expel the normal wastes of the body. And if this is interfered with, some form of poisoning is the inevitable result, and the patient becomes ill. Health gives way to disease, which may necessitate for its cure a far greater expenditure of time, energy, effort, and expense than would have been necessary in devising and following suitable habits and regulations for a healthy and proper life. Keep well. You will find that it pays. The fast way. Voluntary abstinence from food as a method for the cure of disease is as old as animal life itself. We find unmistakable evidence that the lower forms of animal and bird life have instinctively chosen this means of restoring themselves to the normal whenever it was necessary. The pristine struggle for the survival of the fittest made it imperative that, when the opportunity came for satisfying the cravings of hunger, the fortunate winner in the contest should satiate himself to the utmost with the food at his immediate disposal. And gorging upon the fruits of conquest seems to have been a reasonable procedure for primitive man whose sustenance was hard to obtain and difficult to preserve, both against putrefaction and the attacks of his neighbor, who was no less eagerly desirous of satisfying his hunger for food. As man's intelligence increased, He became more and more a ruler over nature, and we see him in the agricultural age learning how to store away, cunningly, grain and tubers, and even finally to preserve by drying the flesh of animals so as to be able to put away provisions for use as desired. When nutritious food became plentiful, the cravings of hunger became less, and the cultivation of Epicurean appetites for tasty dishes became more and more a vice, from which man has actually suffered in a greater degree than from the forced hunger of his primordial struggle against nature. The way has been long down the pathway of time from our savage ancestors to the highly evolved man of this age. But who can imagine what advancement could have been obtained if the human race had learned the benefits that could be secured spiritually, mentally, and physically through the control of false appetites? Here and there through the years that have gone, some calm soul has paused for a while to raise his voice in protest against sensual gratifications. But the mad crowd have little heeded the words or the spirit of such teachings, and have struggled on in their pursuit of power over everything but themselves, making of their bellies the graveyards of their souls. Such spiritual teachers as Krishna, Moses, Christ, Buddha, and Mahomet have awakened the minds of their followers in some degree to the moral and ethical desirability of control over sensual pleasures. But I believe a knowledge of the wealth of good effects to be derived from the practice of temperate ways will come more abundantly to those who understand that the practice of good habits will bring about rapid physical changes, which will make for more immediate happiness here and now. The earliest physicians and healers were practically united in teaching that good health depended upon abstemious living, and many of the early writers and teachers advocated the practice of denying food to the body that was suffering from disease. Through the centuries, thousands of teachers have come and gone with their circles of disciples who have practiced fasting for the cure of disease. But because of the necessarily strict regime to be followed, the majority of sufferers have either not been informed of this treatment by their physicians, or have passed the method by because of their belief in easier systems, or a conviction that it seemed like a utopian dream. Our libraries are so full of books written upon this subject that the diligent seeker after the truth cannot fail to be interested in the published works of such writers as Dewey, Haskell, Tanner, Carrington, Hazard, Eales, Sinclair, McFadden, Tilden, Brooke, and a host of other earnest investigators whose findings and sincerity of purpose cannot be questioned. I have made a most exhaustive study of every method of cure from mind cure to modern surgery and gland therapy, and I have never found a single method that could approach even closely, in its results, the benefits which come from some form of the fasting cure. It is not my desire in this treatise on the subject to present to my readers an encyclopedia of fasting and diet, but rather to give them the results of my personal observation and investigation, and the lessons they seem to me to convey. As the word fasting may mean any restriction or regulation of food or drink, there are in consequence many different methods and degrees of fasting, from the elimination of one kind of food to complete abstinence from any food or drink whatsoever. Several bodily changes will be noted during the course of a fast, which account for the remarkable results which follow this method of treatment. These are: first, fasting gives the body a chance to cleanse itself of the accumulation of the products of imperfect metabolism due to the overingestion of food which the body could not use for building or repair material. As assimilation is retarded, elimination proceeds with increased activity, and the body is truly house cleaning itself. Second, the rest given the digestive organs is no doubt of great benefit to the person who has lived not wisely but too well. Digestive and assimilative strength is increased to a marked degree if the stomach and intestines are allowed to pause in their work, that work which has been going on night and day for so many years, and normal functioning is thus re-established. Third, normal hunger soon returns for simple, nourishing food, and replaces the cravings of an appetite which has known no satisfaction. One never experiences the natural sensation of hunger until disease is overcome. Disease is cured. As fasting is undertaken with the object of giving the body a chance to cure itself, it can be used in some form in the treatment of every acute or chronic disorder. I do not know of a disease where fasting is contraindicated. In the following chapters, I shall discuss the treatment as applied in the common disorders, where the results have been most startling. General conduct of a complete fast. In the conduct of the complete fast, all food is denied the body, and the patient is allowed only water as a beverage. As a rule, the amount of water taken is governed by the thirst of the patient, which is usually a reliable guide, but in certain fevers, it seems wise to force the water drinking to the utmost. And in the case of the patient's inability to swallow, through constriction of the esophagus or loss of mental powers, it is necessary to administer the water in the form of a slow enema or a Murphy drip. Enemas, the best results can only be achieved if the colon is washed once or twice daily with an enema of warm water. This is best taken in the knee-chest position, allowing the water to flow slowly to avoid cramping. Use only warm water without the addition of soap or other irritating material. Retain the water in the colon for 5 or 10 minutes while lying on the back, then sitting on the toilet. Permit it to leave as slowly as possible, thus avoiding injury to the rectal membrane. No normal bowel movements will occur during the fast, but the elimination of toxins will proceed with more intensity. If this bulk of water is given to the colon to aid it in expelling the effete poisons which are constantly accumulating. Bathing, as the action of the skin is one of the most important eliminative functions of the body, it is necessary that suitable measures be used to increase its performance. Shower or sponge baths of tepid water seem to get the best results for this purpose, and are preferable to warm tub baths, which are enervating and contraindicated for anyone who is attempting a regime for gaining strength. Exercise. It is advisable to keep up all of the ordinary activity of everyday life, but physical culture exercises should not be used during the fast as the muscles cannot be developed, while material for their growth is withheld. Increased strength is often felt as the fast progresses, because of the body gradually becoming free from the encumbrance of impurities and excess poundage. Breathing exercises are helpful in eliminating poisonous gases from the lungs, and also in giving the body a large supply of oxygen to use in its adjustment of metabolism. Symptoms. As assimilation is suspended, elimination is increased, and the accumulated toxins which are being ejected from the system will generally produce a condition similar to biliousness, with headache and often nausea for the first day or two. If these symptoms persist, it is an indication of an especially bad case of auto-toxemia, and the fast must be continued at least until the headache and nausea disappear. Appetite for eating will vanish in the first few days and will not again appear for many days. A lonesomeness for food may be felt for some time by those who are not occupied in some work, which distracts their attention from the usual hour for meals. Patients must be careful about jumping out of bed too quickly or walking rapidly up a hill, as they will often feel dizzy from the sudden change in the blood circulation to the brain. This is an ordinary symptom and need cause no alarm, being due to the changes taking place in the bloodstream. The tongue will become coated at first, and the breath foul and offensive until the most virulent of the waste products are eliminated. Length of fast. If the complete fast be continued long enough, the tongue will become clear, the breath sweet, the mouth will be as clean as a baby's, and hunger and strength will return to the normal. This often takes from 30 to 60 days, and I have known instances where it did not return for 90 days. Such lengthy fasts should not be attempted by anyone except under the care of a physician who understands every detail and symptom liable to occur. I seldom find it necessary to advise a patient to go to the extreme finish of a complete fast. Satisfactory results are generally realized by shorter fasts, followed by a proper dietary regime or by a series of short fasts. Fruit fasts. Although theoretically the best results should follow the complete fasts, I have found by experience that fruit fasting will bring about very beneficial results. And for several reasons, this seems the best fast to use for most cases, except in the severe forms of acute diseases. The fruits or fruit juices used contain only a small amount of nutriment, which does not seem to check elimination to any appreciable extent, and often seems actually to aid in expelling waste matter by inducing a steady flow of fluids from the alimentary canal, and also in providing bulky material when the whole fruit is used. The fruits most commonly recommended are the orange, lemon, grapefruit, fresh apricots, cherries, grapes, and apples. These fruits or their juices are used several times a day, often with the addition of agar-agar or mineral oil. Agar-agar is a dried Japanese seaweed which can be purchased in any drugstore in a granulated form or may be used freely to provide bulk, as it has practically no food value. Mineral oil is sold in all drugstores under various trade names and is a harmless lubricant which aids in intestinal elimination. Detailed information will be given in the following chapters regarding the treatment of specific diseases. Fasting and starvation. Scientific fasting and starvation are very different, and one must never be confused with the other. If the patient voluntarily abstains from food when food is obtainable, he need not fear harm from such denial, as normal hunger will assert itself before the condition of starvation can exist. The habit of eating regular meals is so firmly established that people have died in a few days from the fear of starvation, because they did not know that the body can live for a long time without food. In most cases of forced fasting, there is also exposure to the elements, with a choking of the eliminative processes. This, however, is very different from a properly conducted fast where food may be had for the asking, and where the body is aided in many ways, by bathing, enemas, etc., and the patient may have the enjoyment of every pleasure save eating. Patients should be cautioned not to argue with their friends who do not understand the philosophy of scientific fasting, as this only tends to disturb the mind of the patient, and may interfere with his cure, no matter how sincere he may be in attempting to follow this necessarily strict regime. Thoughts are things, and nothing but harm can come from trying to convert an obstinate friend who does not realize the difference between fasting and starvation. The time to fast is when suffering from any acute or chronic disease, and the fast, or series of fasts, should be continued until the patient is cured. After the cure, it should not be necessary ever again to subject oneself to such a treatment, if the patient will only make a study of those habits which produce the disorder and substitute better ones for them. Of course, there are times when food should be withheld for a meal or two, when one is very tired or under great mental strain from enervating emotion, such as grief or anger or intense pain, but fasting should not be made a habit for the well. In the remaining pages of Part 1 of this book will be found set forth, alphabetically, a list of the disorders commonly met with in the author's office practice, together with a description of the treatment accorded to each, and particulars of typical cases selected from the office files. It may be explained that these are not put forward with any idea of inducing those who are sick to undertake the diagnosis of their own cases, or to lead them into thinking they have this or that specific trouble, but are quoted for the guidance of such persons as have been carefully examined by a reputable practitioner and pronounced to be suffering from some particular disease. To these, the information can hardly fail to be of interest and benefit. In order to understand the references in the first part of the book to such terms as non-starchy, salad, etc., as applied to vegetables, and the division of foodstuffs into proteids, starches, and so on, the reader should first of all consult the second part of the book where such terms are fully explained and the various foods and vegetables segregated and tabulated. It is true that in dealing with certain diseases, full lists of the vegetables recommended have been quoted in Part 1 where this has been deemed advisable, but to have kept on repeating such lists would have been obviously impracticable, and so the terms salad, non-starchy, etc., have been employed instead as a simple means of indicating some particular class or category. Common disorders and their treatment. Acne. This form of skin disease is